In today's episode, neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. Your internet is fine, you don't need an engineer. Personal responsibility? Okay. So let's get started. Neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. So, I have a Karen for a neighbor. She's a grumpy old C with a live-in son in his 40s and no other family or friends. And when I say she's a Karen, we're talking to the point that she came into my property to yell at our landscaper about a boulder he was installing on our property, something about believing it would fall over. On to more of our property. A few months after we moved in, we receive a letter trying the HOA saying they'd received complaints and asking that we make sure we're mowing, watering, and maintaining. I chalked it up to moving into a nicer neighborhood and made an effort to mow twice a week instead of my normal once, added a little time to the sprinklers, and figured all was good. Apparently, it was not all good, as we received another letter stating the complaints had continued and the HOA wanted to talk with us to see what the problem was. I should note, we had just moved in not that long ago and hadn't landscaped the back yet, so we're letting our dogs pee on the front at night, which lead to the inevitable patches of bright green grass that grow stupid fast. Now I'll freely admit I don't keep my yard to the level of some of my neighbors, but it was in perfectly good shape outside some green spots in an otherwise average-looking yard, and I do my best to keep things mowed and looking decent. Turns our grumpy C had taken real offense to this and started complaining to the HOA. The hearing ended up bringing mostly incoherent rambling, but the bottom line was she didn't like how our lawn looked with the green spots. While the HOA agreed this was not her business and definitely not theirs, I decided she was right, and we should stop letting our dogs out in the front to pee, as I also don't like the green spots. Now, I put them on the leash and let them do their business in her yard, read, tree lawn. And I'm clearly not the only one, as her entire yard is now covered in pee spots and dead spots on her actual lawn, which my dogs don't step for on. I'm pretty sure she's complained about everyone with a dog, and now the entire neighborhood takes their dogs to her yard. The best part, she actually does a shit job taking care of her lawn, weeds and crabgrass everywhere, she just waters it almost non-stop. So today I got to report her to the HOA for her yard looking like total shit. If it were any other house, there are much worse, I wouldn't care at all, but this lady wanted lawns without spots, so I'm just doing my part to enforce her rules. Your internet is fine, you don't need an engineer. So I work for a company that provides VoIP/networking solutions and IT support, so I get this call from a well-known angry customer who also happens to be friends with the boss. To top it off, we usually only support businesses and not residential customers, but we sold him some internet on the cheap for his mother's house. People involved: me. Bob equals angry Bob. Boss equals big boss and in company owner. The conversation: me, good afternoon dash. Bob, you sold US dodgy internet, been trying to call all weekend. Me, sorry sir, our offices are only open September 5th Monday Friday, but let me take some details for you, and I'll run some tests our side and get back to you. Bob, my mother is 86 years old, and is a vulnerable person, and hasn't been able to watch TV. Me, I understand that sir, but if you give me some details I can investigate for you, and get this resolved ASAP. Bob, no, just send an engineer out tonight, currently 4:30 on a Monday. Bob, ends call. At this point I go away, speak to my manager and BB, get some background, find the details I need, investigate, and the lines are fine. AB calls again. Bob, are you sending an engineer? Me, I have run some check on the circuit, and it is absolutely fine, so a BT engineer wouldn't be able to do anything. If you tell me what the problem is, I can help you to try and resolve it over the phone. Bob, no, just send the BT engineer. Me, okay, but you will have to accept potential charges if the fault is not with the line, and is with the local equipment. I really think we should try some first-line resolutions first. Bob, no, send the engineer. 24 hours and £270 call-out charge later. Bob, the engineer didn't fix the internet, why am I being charged? Me, as I previously stated, the line checks were fine, and the BT engineer is only responsible for line maintenance. It sounded like it was a local issue. Bob, fine, you get down here and sort out the router. It has to be that router you sold us. Me, I will have to clear this with BB. Should we go over first line resolutions first, or at least give me a description of the problem? Bob, no, I'll speak to boss myself. Hangs up. Boss, Dan, just to shut him up, would you fancy going to take a look? Usual charges would apply if it's not a fault with our equipment. Me, no problem. So I go to visit the house. Luckily AB isn't there, but his sister is, who is polite enough. It turns out there was an issue with their Android streaming box used to stream international channels, and since they were nice enough, I reconfigured that for them. They also had no other devices actually connected to the Wi-Fi, so I connected the house up, including their security system, etc. The best part of this is that I could have talked him through all of this, as it was very simple stuff, even though they aren't covered, and would have taken about 10 to 15 minutes, but he ended up paying over £500 in call-out charges. Personal responsibility? Okay. I've been doing all my shopping online, from groceries to clothes, everything, which means I usually get a lot of deliveries. I also buy a lot of stuff for my family to use, ESP, when groceries and basic necessities. I started buying from more small local businesses, it being the pandemic and me wanting to help them more instead of big businesses like Amazon. This has meant having to deal with incredibly vague, or straight up wrong, delivery information. I've worked at a small business before, so I expected these problems and don't mind it. Few weeks ago. Mom doesn't work anymore, sis is on term break, and I am working from home having a meeting. A delivery comes and no one answers the door. I have my headphones on so I can't hear the bell. The delivery man calls me and tells me he has been ringing the door, and no one is answering even though he can hear the TV. I apologize and run out to collect the parcel, see my mom in front of the teller with so much indifference. This makes me mildly annoyed, and I asked her nicely to help open the door next time. Immediately she screams at me for assuming she has nothing to do, which sets off this shouting match between her and I. My sister comes out of her room, takes my mother's side and shouts at me for being rude just for expecting my mother to answer the door. At this point I'm livid, and I ask if it's too much to expect my own family to help with these things, ESP, when I'm working. They both go on about how it's my personal responsibility to collect my own deliveries, and that I should not take for granted that they'll help just because they're at home. And that I should tell them when I have deliveries coming, to which I try to explain about the often vague delivery estimates I get. This one in particular was supposed to come 2 days later. I point out to them that most of the deliveries that come from me end up being shared by the family, i.e. the groceries, coffee, necessities, etc., and that at the start of the year, before my mom quit her job, I was working from home alone collecting everyone's deliveries even when no one tells me about any incoming ones. I singled out one day my sister had 4 deliveries and I collected them all with no complaints. But obviously none of it gets through to them, and I give up the argument since I was outnumbered. Bring on the MC. I stopped ordering groceries for the whole family and food runs out. Both mom and sis just assume that I would order more, and when I don't they question me about it, and I tell them that it's their own personal responsibility to get their own groceries. A couple of deliveries came for my sister when she wasn't home, and I didn't bother receiving it because the personal responsibility was hers to collect. Plus, she didn't tell anyone about them. Turns out one of those deliveries was a laptop, and because no one answered the door, it was left outside and got stolen. My sister got, rightfully, angry at me and my mother, but I used their *T personal responsibility excuse back on her. Now no one is talking to each other, but I don't care. I feel like I've willingly and readily helped them, but when I ask for help in return it's way too much for them to do so. This might be petty AF, but *CK it. It's the card they chose to play. Thanks for watching.